Sorry, Chloe, you gotta go.
So, welcome back. This is Night Flight, and today Dylan Charles is my guest again, and we are going to talk about self-sabotage in critical times. And
What's up, Judith? Yeah, thanks for having me again. It's always lots of fun to talk to you.
mm,
I'm in Asheville, North Carolina, so it's the tail end of the summer. It's been nice and warm, but it's beautiful out here. There's still leaves on the trees, and but I can feel fall creeping up. So
mhm, yeah, then it will be easier to sleep again because here we do not have air conditioning.
you don't have what?
Air conditioning.
I don't have air conditioning either.
No, okay.
Yeah, so the warmest it gets up here, I don't know what it is in Celsius, but it can get up to 89, sometimes just over 90 degrees. And so the office, like the space that I'm in right now, there's no air conditioning. So
Hmm, yeah.
wear shorts, take the old shirt off, kick back, turn the ceiling fans on, like a tropical
Yeah,
vibe, you know.
I'm not so sure if sitting in front of the camera without a shirt would be appropriate for me.
Nope, no, it wouldn't. Mm.
I think that would be a little bit disturbing. Yeah, so we have a lot of areas where we interact with people and have some sort of relationship with them. I
Mhm.
guess what most of us at one point in our lives had was a relationship in the workplace with it. And I'm not talking about here about romantic relationships. And so, how can we self-sabotage us in our workplace?
You mean just like with your job, that sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah. So let's say you are somebody that is always procrastinating, you're missing the deadlines, and
Avoiding things, yeah.
yeah, and what have you. So would you say that is something that we should avoid or
You should
clean
avoid
up in
avoiding.
our
You
life?
should avoid avoiding. Well, I mean, I guess I've been I've had these conversations with you a couple of times now, and has been three or two in the past, and
I guess
it
three.
three, yeah, and so it's been a little while. I haven't really been publishing any content in my website. Waking Times. I've been taking a break from that. I haven't even published a podcast. I've got one recorded, but I haven't even published a podcast in close to a year. I've got a few more lined up, so I think I'm about to get that going again. And just for the fun of it, just for talking to people and having interesting, deep conversations. But I think my views on self-sabotage are evolving quite a bit.
Okay.
I don't. It's a great term. Like, it's a very powerful term. It really resonates with people. It makes a lot of sense because people tend to feel like, oh, I'm in my own way. I'm my own worst enemy. And that manifests in so many ways. I mean, right before we started recording, you and I were talking about alcoholism, and I'd love to come back to that. Um, and so, the more I work with people as a coach, the more I sit with people, and the coaching that I do, the is really very reflective of the experiences I've had, and not only the experiences I've had, but the experiences I'm going through. I mean, you can look at me right now. I feel good. I look good, but it's been an extraordinarily challenging year for me in my personal life. And people go through these dark nights of the soul, dark nights of the ego. They go through these things. And when they're in the trenches, when they're in the depths of suffering, it's like, it's easy to think about how joyful it would be not to be here on this planet in this life anymore, right? It can get that bad, and it frequently does for people. But then when you break through, when something finally clicks, when your hard work pays off, when the information, the positive information you're taking in, when it finally sinks in, when it finally clicks, like when things shift, which they do, if you commit and you persevere, right? Then you realize, oh, okay, well, there's a whole lot more of me that's available for life again. And so whether it's your job, whether it's relationships, whether it's your home life or finances, or whether it's your own personal health, Self-sabotage is a term that really helps people to understand that, hey, wait a minute, I'm responsible. Like maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's a cool way to look at it. Self-sabotage, because a lot of people, when they hear that for the first time, it really resonates. So maybe what it's really saying to them is like, wait, I have some responsibility here. It's not just that the world is crazy. It's not just that the new world order is bearing down on me. It's not just that the foods are toxic, the information is toxic. Like, I have a responsibility here as well. And so I find myself using the term self-sabotage less and less. And the reason for that, Judith, is because I see over and over again that what's really slowing people down, what's really keeping people in that feeling of what so many call stuckness. I'm stuck in life. I don't know what to do. I don't know what my options are. Like, I don't know how to get through this phase in my life. And what they're all basically expressing is that they're experiencing a certain level of energy in their life. And so they're not stuck. They can get up and drive to work. They're not stuck. They can get up and they can go out and do things. They can go on vacation. They could take trips. What they're really trying to express when they say that they're stuck is that their life has a certain energy about it, has a certain quality to it. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good enough. Right. And so when you're in that stuckness, when you're in that sort of level of less than, could be, not quite, just, things could be better. When you're in that energy, yeah, it's going to affect your work, your relationships. It's going to affect how you care for yourself. It's going to affect, and I think this is really, really important, it's going to affect how you look at the world and how much significance you place on the things that are going on. By now, so many people are waking up. So many people are waking up to the COVID stuff. I mean, it's like every day, new, very credible news stories come out about how damaging the vaccines are, how damaging the policies were, both economically and to mental health, to our physical health, even. Like even the effects of breathing in fibers of masks. That was supposed to be such a great thing, but it turns out we're actually like ingesting, breathing in all these microparticles and stuff from the masks themselves, and then also recirculating bacteria. Well, whatever. Like, we keep seeing more and more news stories like this, but yet they're trying to roll this out again. So it really is as a test for people to see how they can change their relationship to what's going on in the world, because what should be obvious to people by now is, like, there's a trend, there's a movement. You described a lot of things happening in Germany that no one person can get out there and say, oh, well, stop the madness, hit a reset button, stop the madness, not the great reset button. But no one person can do that. And no collective of people operating in a really low state of energy, a low frequency, a very contractive state of being, can do anything about that. And so self-sabotage really, really, to me, is it's kind of almost the way I like to look at it now is like, what's more valuable than calling it self-sabotage is expressing your desire to achieve emotional self-mastery. Because what I see over and over and over again is that people who self-sabotage their lives, are operating in emotional states that aren't fitting of who they are as a sacred divine being. Like, it's not an expression of how powerful they are, could be, and should be. And so I really, over and over again, like I said, I just see that the emotional patterns that govern one's life are of critical importance. So yeah, when you're in those states, yeah, you can screw up a job, you can easily screw up a marriage, you can screw up relationships with your kids, you can lose opportunities, you can screw up friendships, you can screw up your finances really easily.
Mm-hmm.
You can screw up your physical health really easily. But when you start to reframe it and understand it, and it's great to say self-sabotage, because when you're like, oh shit, I self-sabotage, you're like, well, okay, well, what you're really saying is, I have a role to play, I have some responsibility here. So when you take that on and you look deeper, you realize that what's really governing your life isn't this umbrella term self-sabotage that means the same thing to everyone. What it really is like, there's a unique emotional reality, an emotional fabric, an imprint to your life that you live by unconsciously. And the expression of that emotional pattern is what brings you the results and the experiences that you have in life. And so when you really start to drill into that, that's really where the gold is to be found. And yeah, so I think it is imperative for people to understand that a lot of things have to be taken out of the picture before you can really get a clear view of what these emotional patterns are. And this is why before we started recording, you and I were talking about alcoholism, but it's alcoholism, weed, whatever drugs, pharmaceutical pills, antidepressants, even like anything that gives you anything that could be considered self-medication. And you know, what is self-medication? It means that you don't feel right inside. There's a discomfort in you. There's an agitation, an edginess, right? It's the end of the day. I just got to take the edge off, right? There's something in you that isn't right. Those are hints. Those are your guideposts. Those are your warning signs of what's really happening with you emotionally. But we're just taking the edge off. Have a glass of wine or two or five, right? You know, sit in front of the TV for 6 hours, whatever it is. So long answer to a short question, but that's really what I see. Self-sabotage is really, it's an invitation to examine your life more deeply.
Hmm. Do you think that a huge chunk of the population worldwide, especially, I guess, in the West, is very comfortable with their victimhood?
I don't think anybody's comfortable with it, but I don't think that people are aware of it enough to recognize that that's what it is. I think people generally aren't. I think even the people that seem to be hunky-dory, that seem to be going along to get along, that are playing all the games, doing all the credit traps and buying all the things and wearing all the logos and the symbols that everybody else is and repeating all the same phrases and listening to the same music and watching the same shows. Like, I think there's those people are really good at masking the emptiness, you know.
Why I asked that, I told you about this crazy new law here in Germany. Oh, we have to heat our houses now. So I see a lot of comments, you know, like, yeah, they are governing against the people, which is correct. And I cannot fathom that there is no way legally to stop such a government and stuff like that. But very, very well, actually, today I didn't see any of that. That's very, very rare, where somebody comes to the realization, actually, we are the ones that keep the system rolling. Because if, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, something that came to mind when you said that was, and there have been examples like this all the time, all over the world throughout history. But one of the, probably from within the last year, Judith, but one of the Chinese lockdowns, you know, one of the China lockdowns, and it got so bad and so severe and was so prolonged. And I remember seeing videos of like finally people were just had it, just freaking had it. I just gonna open up my window and scream, and then wow, lo and behold, like next thing you know, the whole block, everyone's isolated, compartmentalized in their own container. But it turns out everybody really feels the same way. You know, everybody really feels the same way. And so I think that's what people are masking, is that they just don't know if it's okay to speak out. They don't know if it's okay to say no. And I think it's becoming more acceptable. I mean, it's just interesting because, you know, it's been what, 3 or 4 weeks. I noticed I saw Alex Jones, Infowars, you know, I saw him talking about, you know, here comes another lockdown. They're going to roll the whole thing out. And I was like, well, you know, Alex is usually right. You know, like I can't sit here and tell you that I'm an Alex Jones fan. Everybody has their faults, but Alex has been the canary in the coal mine for a long time. And sure enough, within a week or two, we start to see these policies. And I don't think social media is really a great barometer anymore. It's so censored, it's so manipulated and whatnot. But it is kind of a place where you can see what other people think. You know, other people who aren't within your physical, you know, vicinity, right? Other people that you can actually, I can see people from all over the world, you know, what they think. And there's a lot of people that are like, you know, don't comply, don't comply, don't comply. So it takes strength, it takes courage to get to that point within yourself to be like, you know what, I know where my line is and I'm not crossing it for anything. So it takes courage to get that within yourself. And I know from having gone through this process, you know, this awakening process, the realization that the governing structures in this world aren't what they're advertised as, and they don't really have our best interest at heart, to put it lightly. And I know you've had guests and you've had people that can talk about the evilness, the depths of the evil, and the dark forces and all that. But I'd like to keep things really available, really accessible to people in a day to day, just in life, right? I can't go out and do anything about the evil forces, right? But I can do stuff about how I feel about the world itself. So it takes a tremendous amount of courage to flip that switch within yourself and say, okay, for lack of a better way to put it, I've had all I can stand because I can't stand no more. What's that? That's Popeye, right? That's that old Popeye cartoon. I've had all I can stand because I can't stand no more. And then he eats the can of spinach and goes out there and whoops butt, right? But that's really it. That's the turning point in people. And it's not just the turning point in people. It really speaks to like how human psychology works, and what consciousness really is, and what it means to actually experience high consciousness, low consciousness. There's always this talk about higher consciousness, and it brings with it the connotation, the image of a monk sitting in a cave meditating, totally cut off, ascetic, cut off from the world, right? Or living some peaceful Zen life out in the woods, right? Higher consciousness has to be available to people everywhere, anywhere, in any situation, right? Viktor Frankl is an example of this. Higher consciousness is available to people anywhere and everywhere in any moment of their life. And so the difference, the difference, or the delineation between high consciousness and low consciousness is courage, right? And so what you're really expressing here is you're expressing energy. You can express this numerically. You can express this just in how you feel. I mean, somebody who is racked with grief, who lives in apathy, just doesn't care, can't even get themselves out of bed, that's obviously very, very low energy. But somebody who's just turned on by the world and ready to go and full of life and zeal and all of that, like that's a higher level of consciousness. And so really helping people get to that point to where they open that floodgate of courage within themselves to do what's right for them, right? So maybe they're self-sabotaging at a job because it's not the right job for them. Maybe they're screwing up a relationship because it's not the right relationship, or something needs to be said that hasn't been said, or they've been suppressing feelings and stuff about it. So, but like really getting to that point of courage. So whether it's in relationship to your spouse, your partner, or relationship to your government or the new world order, whatever it is, like to bring yourself to a high enough level of energy to experience courage, and then to accept what's happening so that you can rationally and logically and intentionally confront life in a way that you choose. That's different. That's a different way of being than feeling stuck. And so many people are stuck. So,
So what I notice, a lot of people, well, I have met a lot of them during my life, and they had a distorted self-image. They had a subconsciously, I would say, there was a record playing without end, saying, I'm not good enough, I will not make it, I will not get the position, and they are looking for such and such type, and it's even a family a family history. We are not that ascend and up the ladder. Yeah, well, if you are in that state of mind, it will be very hard to, yeah.
It's to be honest with you, like this is the value of having good friends, mentors, coaches in your life, right? Those are the ones who are perhaps just a step or two higher on the mountain than you, reaching back and pulling you up, right? The self-talk thing is pretty interesting because everything that I talk about, everything that I teach and work with my clients, is all stuff that I've experienced. So I'm not like guessing, like, and I don't even. I've been through so much in my life, and I've experienced other people's stories so much that it's just it's all so archetypal to me. It's all so common. People are always in the same, everybody experiences the same things at some point in their life. And so the self-talk, the low self-esteem, the self-worth, so much of that, of course, it originates from how you were treated, the experience you had, the container you were in as a child, so much of that, right? People don't realize that it's to change that, like little wins, little things that you can do for yourself, do wonders for your self-esteem, your self-confidence, right? And so that's what I really encourage people to do is reframe your perspective. You're not all is lost. This dialogue that you're experiencing in your head, these negative thoughts, we can deal with those directly. You can sit down and write those out. You can listen to what those stories are. You can skillfully separate yourself from a repetitive negative story that's in your head. So I do this all the time with my clients, and it's a great place to start, because over and over again, Judith, what people see is that what they're hearing in their head about themselves isn't, they're so self-destructive, they're so destructive, right, that they wouldn't even, they're so hurtful, so destructive that they wouldn't even say these things to an enemy. That's how bad they are. And I think it's almost so much of this stuff is in people's minds just because there's never a cleanup. There's never a jubilee of mental madness, right? Okay, let's do a full reset, toss it all out the window. We're going to cancel all this negative debt in our heads and start over. That's not something that we do. We have NFL football season. We have, World Cup every 4 years. We've got these things that we do and celebrate, cyclically, these rites of passage or whatever. But we don't ever say, okay, it's time. It's been 8 months, 7 months. It's been a year. It's time to just pause, reflect, evaluate, take stock of what's happening in your own head, flush it out down the commode, wherever it needs to go, and move forward. But people have the power to do that. Everybody has the power to do that. Mm-hmm. And you don't realize that when you're stuck in these loops. You don't realize that you're not experiencing something that's super unique to you. It's just part of how humans work. So we could have a whole nother conversation about how the influences of media, how the influences of culture, how the New World Order, the archonic forces and all this stuff affect and influence how you think about yourself. But in reality, at the end of the day, like, you have the power to address it, to become aware of it, to deal with it skillfully and intentionally and overcome it. You have the power to overcome it, right? And so the benefit of overcoming is that you start to feel a sense of relaxation in your mind, a relaxation in your body. And more and more what I see, Judith, is what people really want to experience right now with everything that's going on. They want to feel relaxed. They want to feel relaxed, right? Your power comes from relaxation. I mean, go look at a lion in the jungle, right? Or in the African savannah or what have you, right? Like, totally relaxed, sitting there, long, slow breaths just under the sun. And when it's time to get up to pounce, springs into full motion, he has full access, or she, because the lionesses, they're the hunters, right? They have full access to their powers from a resting position, right? And so when people say that they're stuck, what they're really expressing is they've lost access to their power to make significant, meaningful changes in their lives. It doesn't mean that it's not there. It means that they've lost access to it. And there's such an agitation. And again, I know so many teachers and guides, and they're also very valuable, and they're also doing such important work. We'll sit here and they'll explain how the EMFs are affecting us, how the satellites are affecting us, how the chemtrails are affecting us, how the water quality is affecting us, how the background radiation is affecting us. Like, it just goes on and on and on. But we're all living in that same fishbowl. And I've seen it over and over again, and I've experienced in my life. Like, you can get to a place where you're relaxed in this insane fishbowl. You can have access to your power again. You can develop a sense of command and agency over your life again, even in this. So that's why I've really steered away from producing content, because I'm learning how to phrase and present this information, which is different than the easy task of just describing everything that's wrong, everything that's out of whack, everything that's out of place. So it's important for people to realize it's self-talk. It's how you feel about yourself. There's the trauma. Everybody's got trauma. Overcoming trauma. How do you do your trauma? What's the technique that's going to get me through my trauma? everybody has the power within them to overcome these things. It begins with the courage to commit to yourself. It begins with an intention, right? And again, bringing in allyship helps. A close friend, somebody that you can really depend on, if that's all you got. I'm not one who would do psychiatry or anything like that, but a therapist, a counselor, a good therapist, a counselor, someone who doesn't have a medicinal approach to that, like, can be very, very helpful. A coach, like the right coach, like somebody who really resonates with you, somebody that has been where you are, right? And this is also important because we're talking about people being powerful in a time when our power is being usurped. It's like, you talk about what's happening in Germany. They want to take away your power to decide how to heat your house, right? Like, you can't even have the power to provide heat for yourself, right? So we have to be able to access what we have, what we're feeling cut off from. And so I think that's really what I'm focused on these days.
So old habits die hard, especially bad habits. So let's say you have detached somebody from their own destructive story that they have been telling themselves. So how do you make sure that the story doesn't pop up after a couple of weeks? Do you have any ideas?
So what you're asking is, how do you make sure that people don't drop back into their old habits, make improvements, and then fall back?
Mm. What would you tell somebody that comes to you and says, you know what, Dylan, I was really okay for the last 6 months, but now I'm noticing the same stupid thought pattern.
There are tools, right? People have tools, things that work for them, right? If you're talking specifically about thought patterns, I'm a huge advocate. I talk about this all the time with my clients. Like, get out of your head, get into your body. So when I say tools, there are things people can do to bring them back to that place that they can pounce from, right? Especially for men, getting strong, like, get your body strong, man. Get out there, do some martial arts, get some weights, do some weightlifting, do some running, get your fitness back together. But these are tools. Like, one that's been really helpful to me over some of the things that I've been going through, just going and sitting in a sauna for 15, 20 minutes. For some reason, when I sit in a sauna and I start breathing, a whole lot of the noise stops. I'm concentrating on the discomfort of being in the sauna and sweating. Of course, yoga, qigong, any kind of meditation, breathing, Wim Hof breathing, whatever it is. Like, we have tools to get out of our head and into our bodies, and that's really critical. But people don't often just change permanently for the better. But it's about progress, not perfection, which is a cliche, but it's about progress, not making the win and then never having to go back. But the thing is, when you get to that point in 6 months, you already have the experience, you already have the feeling of knowing what it feels like to have overcome. And so with that feeling, so perhaps you go back to a friend and you're like, yo, man, I'm not feeling this again. They can talk you up. They can say things, they can raise your energy up. And this is what we're talking about over and over again. It's about accessing your energy to move your life forward. And so, like, a person, a good friend, somebody that knows your story can help you in an instant to be, hey, remember how you felt 6 months ago? You're not there anymore, right? You may be feeling some pullback to that, and that's okay. Sit with it, feel it, right? Let those feelings do what those feelings need to do. But what I see is that the tendency for so many people is to medicate those feelings. So they may be doing great, and then they start to feel a little off, and they start to medicate those. And anytime you self-medicate, which is using something to address that discomfort, using something to address that uneasiness, right? So whether it's alcohol, like I said, drugs, pills, whatever, you're just postponing a confrontation with, I hate to use the word enemy here, but the enemy, right? Which is the negativity of your own mind, of your own spirit, of your own life, right? you're postponing a confrontation with that. And the only way to like to banish this stuff and get over it for good is to ultimately confront it all face to face in sobriety, emotional sobriety, physical sobriety, and sit with it face to face and develop the power to sit with all the uncomfortableness of it, all the suffering, all the pain, all the grief, whatever it is, to sit with all that. And when you finally develop the skill to sit with all that and let it just go wherever it needs to go, and you find yourself back in yourself again, once you do that, that's a win that you'll never forget. But if you start medicating at this, if you start, if you take one drink, I'm not saying like not against alcohol, unequivocally against alcohol. There's definitely a difference between alcoholics and people who drink. But anytime you avoid facing the discomfort and instead opt for something that suppresses the feeling, gives you a numbness from it, you're just putting off a conflict, and the enemy has time to strengthen. The enemy has time to regroup and come back stronger. So I think the time that we're in demands a very sincere level of sobriety. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean don't drink, don't do drugs, whatever. Like it doesn't mean that. What I think the most valuable interpretation of sobriety is emotional sobriety. That's the most useful one. It's the most useful one, right? Because what is an emotion? It's like a drug. I mean, look what happens when you're driving down the road and somebody triggers you in whatever way, and that creates anger, which then puts you in a situation to where all of a sudden your body starts producing adrenaline, cortisol, all these kind of things. In other words, like there is a neurochemical reality in your body that is just as much driven by emotions as it is with substances, whatever else, alcohol, drugs, whatever else. So our biggest drug, literally the biggest drug that people depend on, are emotional patterns, right? That's the biggest thing. And what people don't really realize is that most people are hooked, like neurochemically, physically addicted. When I say addicted, I mean that their body runs the brain. Their body's in control of the brain. They're physically addicted to a drug, and the drug is a set of negative feelings, and they don't realize it. And I had this conversation, Judith, with someone recently. It was kind of humorous because, I myself, I've never smoked crack. I've done some crazy stuff, but I've never smoked crack. But I have friends who have been crack addicts, have like been legit crack addicts for a period of their life. And the first time you do crack, it's amazing. It feels really, really good. But then you want to do crack again, and you do crack again. Long-term, late stages of the addiction, it's not fun. Doing crack doesn't make you feel good, but you still do crack, if that makes sense. Right. Yeah. The body needs it so bad that it drives the brain into taking action to procure, acquire, light up the crack pipe, whatever it takes. But the feeling you get isn't good. It's not euphoric. But so people, when they look at addiction, they see addiction as like, well, it's addiction to a drug. It's the same thing. The feelings that govern our lives, that create the neurochemical cocktail that we're so used to returning to every day, every week, create this drama in my relationship. I'll get that same sense of, the same sense of uneasiness, that friction. Right? That's a whole set of chemicals that I'm hooked on, that I'm used to experiencing. But people don't associate with that. Well, why would I do that if it's negative? Why would I do that if it's negative? Well, people do heroin when they know it's killing them. People smoke crack when it's no fun anymore, and they know it's destroying their life. Like that's the nature. Those are late stages of addiction. So if you find yourself returning to these patterns every day again, these patterns of a lot of it's shame, a lot of it's guilt. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I could have done better. I should have done better. I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have made this choice. I should have made that choice. A lot of this is living in the past or living in a future that hasn't happened yet. Like a lot of this, if you find yourself returning to these feelings, there is a very real addiction happening within you. It's self-contained. It's its own. You got your own little microcosm there with addiction. The source, supply, the drug, everything is within you, right? And so again, like to experience what it is like to be able to relate to this messed up world that we're in from a place of neutrality and acceptance and power. Like you have to be relaxed first. And so, yes, people slip, people go back. But once you start to win on this level, you know what it feels like. And
Mm.
you may slip back a little bit, but you won't take it.
Mm.
You'll rise up even higher and higher again. So
So, in your experience as a coach, what exactly is it that people are horrified to find in themselves if they need to numb themselves down or take the edge off?
well, obviously that's different for people, but if you were to generalize it, I would say that it's, what's the most general way that I could put it? Perhaps it's the realization that they don't believe in themselves as much as they could or they should.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say that also by saying that the story is I'm not good enough. So that's really what the suppression is, that feeling of I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough on some level. And that, that story, that repeated story is I'm not good enough. It can lead people all the way down to contemplation of suicide. Right. And so what they're running from is a misaligned belief about who they really are, if I could say it like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then once that behavior is ingrained in you, you usually no longer recognize why you are doing it. And unless somebody, there is an event or somebody talks to you and then it makes
Mhm.
click.
Yeah, I mean, usually, people are pretty, and I think you've seen this. People are very programmable. You've seen this. People are very programmable. They accept a new normal very easily, which it's a surprising thing to watch. People forget. Right now, I mean, who was I talking to? Somebody used to be able to go, whatever, there's a million stories, but life used to be different just 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. So I'm old enough to know that we used to be a lot more free.
Yeah.
It's only been a relatively short period of time, but people don't remember it. Don't remember it.
Hmm.
I think that using alcohol is a good example of this. Like people don't realize that alcohol helps them to suppress that feeling, push that away. And so, when people don't feel like they're good enough, and they find something that makes them feel a reprieve from that, yeah, they're going to do it over and over again because they want to feel good. They want to be able to perform at work. Like, I've got clients who have created situations for themselves where they can't function. They have created very high level situations for themselves, but they can't function in those situations without repressing and suppressing these feelings through the use of drugs, right? THC, ketamine, different things, right? And so you do this long enough, you start to misplace your understanding of where your power comes from. You start to believe that your power comes from the alcohol. Your creativity comes from the weed, right? Like your ingenuity and ability to focus comes from the Adderall, right? The meth, right? Whatever it is. And so
Hmm.
that just really speaks to, like, we're creatures of habit. We're creatures of habit, right? And it's just as easy for us. It's probably more easy just because of the overall tone of the culture and world culture that we live in. But it's easy for us to develop the habit of living in agitation, living in inner stress, inner suppression of these feelings, within living in a state of stuckness, right? Living in a state of suppressing through the use of self medication. It's like that's just, we're creatures of habit. There's no cultural impetus. There's no famous rappers and famous musicians get out there saying, "Hey, stay sober today, live a good life, smile and be happy." Right? Like they don't do this. They're out there with the devil horns on, throwing bloody hearts around the room, and you know what I'm saying. Like the vibe is so oppressive. It's so intense. So in a sense, we're all battling upstream here. But in a way too, that makes it, the stakes are higher, but the rewards are higher.
Mm.
I've seen so many people break through this, and it's just like, whoa, holy smokes, I'm riding high at a time when I really thought there was no hope. So yeah, I mean, it's very easy to fall into those habits, and truly, it truly is hard. It's difficult, challenging, if you will, to maintain sobriety, whether it's sobriety from booze or sobriety emotionally. It is difficult. It requires much more attention. It requires much more self-compassion. It requires much more focus. It's really, really easy to let yourself go and slip down into the morass with everyone else. So easy. So, I just, alcoholism is an interesting thing because, like you'd pointed out before we started recording here, that it changes. Like it when somebody drinks to a point that it actually brings out something different within themselves, like their spirit, there's like a switch that flips, right?
Yeah,
When
I
you
would say entity takes over.
An entity takes over. It's interesting. I said I haven't done much at Waking Times, but actually there's an article I think I'm going to publish here pretty soon about just my experiences with my last what do you call that, bouts of sobriety from alcohol. It's probably been like 14 months, something like that, since I've had a drink. And after the year mark, I started writing a little article, just really like reflecting on some of the things that I've seen and recognized in this last year. And I've gone sober for longer periods of time in the past. And at those times, like the yearly reflection, it's deeper this time around. I see more clearly what alcohol is doing to other people. I see more clearly what it does to relationships, but also I see more clearly how it is just acting as a salve, a medication. I just see more clearly how it's just preventing people from feeling what they need to feel. Just feel
Mhm.
what you need to feel, and that's it. But you had mentioned like just the perhaps like trying to understand what self-sabotage means in relationships.
Mhm.
And I really feel that especially for men, it's a unique time. And a lot of the men that I know that are in relationships, especially long-term relationships, are going through some very difficult times. But ultimately, all in all, like the standard is to kick back a drink, a glass of wine or 10. That's kind of like the just like the model that we have. And so what I encourage people to do is to consider, I suggest to them, consider that there is a deeper level of sobriety that's going to have an incredibly positive impact on your life, which is therefore going to have incredibly positive benefits on your relationships, your work, your ability to earn, your ability to maintain and manage any problems that you have in your life. And that is emotional sobriety. So whether it's relationships, work, whatever, confront the emotional reality of your life.
Mhm. What about, I mean, all these destructive behaviors towards ourselves? Of course, they can also ruin your marriage, your relationship, whatever. But what about people that, yeah, lose themselves in a relationship? I give you one example. I used to have a coworker, and whenever she met a guy, let's say the guy was into tennis, she picked up playing tennis. The guy was into playing golf, she picked up playing golf. She
Yeah.
didn't enjoy any of it. She just thought it would be a good idea so that they have something in common and can spend time together. But funny enough, it never worked out.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's that old axiom, know thyself. Right? The most attractive people are the ones who really understand and know themselves. But my personal situation is I've basically only had one romantic relationship my whole adult life. My wife and I celebrated our 26th anniversary a few months ago, and having a story like that to reflect on as I look for responses to your question, I can see so many times where, because when we came together, we sort of came together over a certain thing. Like there was a certain scene, if you will, right, that we found each other in, and You know, we've been together almost 30 years, but we're still part of that scene together. We still share that together. There's still things that we do with that aspect of our lives together. You know, it has to do with music and dancing and stuff like that. We still share that. There have been times where she's kind of followed me and started to get on my bandwagon and do things that I found new and exciting. And there's been times that I've done that with her, but it's never worked out. We've never been happy like that. Oh my God, your cat's tail. I wish I could get my chihuahua over here. She's over there sleeping on the couch now. But it's funny though, chihuahuas, when they look at apparently they can't see TV screens. They can't tell. Like I don't understand. I don't understand. It's another conversation, but yeah, I mean, there's when you look at the dynamics of a relationship, you know, one of the things that so many people are experiencing, especially in long-term relationships, is this idea of codependency. You know, codependency, which is, you know, part of that is losing yourself in someone else, right? You know, that person becomes your happiness. That person becomes your mood, right? You know, your whole sense of you can change in a heartbeat depending on how they feel, right? You would manipulate. You can, you know, fall into patterns of manipulating, you know, your partner in order to feel a certain way. You know, codependency is very real, and so I think just generally speaking, people, we all have the choice. We all get this ride of life. You know, we all get this opportunity, and you know, you're pretty cosmic and far out. You know, like you understand that there's old souls, there's new souls, and there's everything in between. Mm-hmm. You know, the old souls are the ones here to absorb the deeper lessons. And a lot of times that means experiencing some of the deeper grief, right? Some of the deeper suffering, right? There's a lot of new souls out here too. Happy-go-lucky. They don't know what the fuck is going on. They just don't know, man. They'll fall in any pitfall, trap, whatever. And I know so many of them that seem to bounce right back. It doesn't matter, you know. But the real value of a life well lived, I see it, you know, perhaps, I don't know. I mean, there's no way to know. I don't have an ID that says you're an old soul on it, but I feel like I've been around a few times. But the value to me is the value of a life well lived to me is one of introspection, one of introspection. There we go. I nailed it. One of introspection, and one of like ever deepening awareness of who you are and why you do what you do, why you do what you do. So relationships can be an outstanding reflection point, you know, a reflecting mirror, reflecting pool, if you will, to learn about yourself. And I happen to be blessed with a relationship like that. It's not easy, very challenging at times. I mean, very challenging, right? But, you know, so like for your friend who, you know, picks up and does whatever her latest boyfriend or whatever does, like, to me, that's a sign of a lack of interest in exploring the depths of themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just life. You know, everybody's in their own. And who knows, Judith, like it could be that 70% of the people out there actually don't even exist. They're just holograms. They're just NPCs. We don't even really know. Like we don't know. We don't know. We don't know anything. There's that old movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? We really don't know. And so, yeah, I mean, your friend's going to learn that lesson and have another relationship. And she might catch herself next time being like, oh, wait a minute. I don't like golf. It's stupid. It's nerdy.
Yeah, I mean, some people love it. And
some people love it. Some people don't.
People are totally not interested. And that is okay as well.
Yeah. So she'll go into another relationship and she very likely she'll carry the awareness into her next relationship that, oh yeah, last time I did this and they were like, oh, I'm into this and that, and I followed along and I lost myself in it. It didn't work out. So maybe I should just hold the line and be me. Just hold the line and be me. You know, and it's interesting too, because really that's what the pod people of the WEF and the New World Order, and that's all they want. They want to, you know, they want a homogenized populace, all baseline, same capacity. That's what communism really is, right? Too, right?
Yeah.
We're all equal. We're all equal, and if we're not equal, we're gonna beat down the better ones until they're as equal as the lower ones, right? And so people do that to themselves. And so this is an extraordinary time. Like it's just an extraordinary time to develop awareness, self-awareness. And the essential question is, why do I do why do I do what I do? Why do you do what you do? Why do you do what you do? Right. And when you peel back all the layers of the programming, I know you've had guests that are just so skilled at speaking, studying and talking about the mind control influences on all of us and whatnot. When you peel back all those layers of the mind control, the substance abuse, the peer pressure, the social pressure, all of that, you still at the end of the day, like you have an opportunity to access something very, very powerful within yourself, and the gateway to that is awareness. Awareness often comes through experience, and it often comes through painful experience. But
Mm.
no matter how dire things seem, no matter how scary the world is, no matter how corrupt, ass backward, brutal, just cruel, just the cruelty that I see in the world. To be at peace within yourself is really the treasure. And it's not just the treasure, it's also the sweetest revenge too. So it's the greatest form of rebellion, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. I also noticed that some people have a tendency to instigate relationship drama
Mm-hmm.
constantly.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have asked myself, especially if you know a little bit about the history of that particular person, I have asked myself if that is not an old abandonment issue acting out. Because, some people have the habit, yeah, better to have negative attention than no attention at all. And so, yeah, the tiniest thing can turn into a drama, which is not really necessary, but it happens time and again.
Yeah, unconsciously outside of people's awareness, I think that most people live with the idea that bad love is better than no love, you know.
Mm.
And what do people experience internally when they're when they're in a moment of conflict, right? What's actually happening like chemically within them? What is the brain doing? What are the hormones doing? What are the they're not releasing oxytocin. They might be actually dopamine releasing. It's not serotonin. It's not a feel good thing, but it is a neurochemical cocktail, right? There is a very it's a it I wouldn't describe it exactly as like fight or flight or panic, but there is a panic. There's a sincere, like a severe agitation of the nervous system in those situations. Okay. So what I see and what I've experienced is that there is an unconscious drive to recreate those situations over and over again to fulfill that same negative set of feelings because the payoff is getting that drug that they feel within their body. So it goes back to what I said earlier. Conflict. When you create conflict on your own life. I mean, one of my clients, an amazing lady, God, I just admire her so much, but she would create the most pointless conflict in her life at her job, outside of her job, at the grocery store. Why am I so frustrated with life? Well, you're creating a lot of conflict for yourself, right? It's actually easier, requires less time and energy to say, oh, yeah, excuse me, you go ahead, than it is to be like, hey, I was here first in line, whatever it is, whether it's your spouse or like this interaction with somebody on the road or whatever. It's actually easier to be kind and courteous and even passive about some of the things that get people so worked up. So you have to ask yourself, why do I do that? Why do I create conflict in my drama? Why am I always fighting with my spouse? In the early stages of that, before you understand what's really happening, you're always pointing the finger, blaming them. What's their fault? If they could just get their shit together, if they could just fucking be in a good mood, if they could just fucking this and that, whatever. Like if they could just change, right? Then I'll be okay. And it's bullshit. It's never gonna happen. Right? It's never ever going to happen. So if you're finding yourself in conflict, if you're honest enough with yourself to admit that you keep experiencing conflict over and over, whether it's with your boss or your spouse or your friends or whatever, like ask yourself why you do what you do. What's the payoff that you get? And when you really examine it deep down, and when you really take out all the crap and the stuff clouding the truth, what you find is that like you're returning to a set of feelings over and over and over again, and whatever it takes to get those feelings back in your body, you'll do it. If I got to be pissed off because somebody left a pair of underwear on the floor, then that's all it's going to take today. If I got to be pissed off because you lost your job and are looking forward to moving on to something better, then that's what it's going to take. If I got to be pissed off because Joe Biden said something on the TV, holographic hologram Joe Biden or whatever it is, body double holographic hologram Joe Biden said something that I don't like on the TV. So I'm going to go start a conflict with the coworker about that. Like, why do you do that? Like, why? What is the payoff? Like we're, especially like the ego aspect of it, we're reward seeking creatures. Like, so if we're doing something over and over again, there's got to be some reward to it. The rational mind may be able to look at it and say, oh, that's not what I would generally consider to be a positive reward. It doesn't make sense. Like, why would I reward myself with feeling anxious, with feeling nervous, with feeling unstable, right? With feeling uncertain, with feeling insecure? Why would I bring conflict in my life over and over again? And the payoff that you get is to feel instability, to feel insecure, to feel anxious, to feel afraid of the outcome, to feel a fear of loss, to feel a fear of abandonment, right? There has to be some payoff in there for you. There's something that you're getting out of it. And even if it's just, I've been doing this so long that my body likes those chemicals, whether my brain or mind doesn't. You can simplify it and just look at it like ridiculously simple and be like, oh, I'm hooked on Diet Coke. Well, I'm also hooked on feeling shitty every day negatively and starting conflict. I'm hooked on those feelings,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever helps you through the day. But
Yeah. So the drama queens and kings, that is one side of the coin. But the flip side sometimes is that people really can't get out of a relationship when they should. Let's say
oof.
a very abusive relationship, or so finally you come to the realization, I'm living with a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they can wreck up your life like you wouldn't believe how
Mm-hmm.
fast that can go. And yet sometimes, sometimes because of religious reasons, or that this is not our tradition, and they stay and stay and suffer and suffer. And yeah, wow.
Let me say this about narcissists, right? A narcissist can't wreck just anybody's life. Okay.
Mm.
A narcissist has to find a perfect match.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's the key in the lock, right? There's a certain type of person that a narcissist seeks out. And so if it's a person that's in a narcissist relationship, they can't get out, it's because they're the perfect match for the narcissist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're the supply.
You're the supply, right? You're the supply, right? And so it just inherently speaking, just naturally, they're going to continue to be the supply until they realize what's really going on, until they come to a deeper understanding of what they've gotten themselves involved to. And that's when the courage can be accessed to do something about that. Most people don't recognize that. They'll just be like, this person's a narcissist, whatever. But the way that you're being, the energy of your being is providing that supply. So as long as they're still in that energy, they'll continue to do that because they're receiving a payoff from the narcissist. Does that make sense? I mean, it's reciprocal. It's
Yeah.
in a sense, it's a balanced relationship. And so for the victim of the narcissist to have the inner honesty to say, okay, I'm co-creating this. And of course, there's extreme cases where there's violence involved, physical abuse, severe emotional abuse and stuff like that. I mean, there's certain situations, and God knows I've known people who've been stuck in those situations, and they're so scared that they can't even tell their friends what's really going on. This happens too. But if you're talking about you're talking about basically like why people are attracted to whatever they're attracted to. People are attracted. So even though they're the victim of a narcissist, like they're there because there's a payoff that they get for being there. There's something about being the supply that fulfills a part of them. And until they recognize that, okay, I'm co-creating this, until they recognize that, the way that they're being is creating opportunities for the narcissist, then it won't change. And, you know, it's tough. Everybody wants to be the victim, or they want to advocate for the victim, and I'd love to do the same. I'd love to do the same. I'd love to be able to, like, oh, well, the victim needs our help. But I got to be true to what I experience in life. And the only times I've ever like up leveled my life, Judith, the only time things have ever gone from bad to good, the things that have ever gone from good to great is really when I've been like, all right, like there's nobody else that has any control over what's happening right now. I'm the only one. So just speaking from my personal experience, like whatever it is, and it's just funny because my brother, he recently went through a divorce, and so he's been going through some of that, oh shit, that moment they were married for 20 something years, and so his energy was really low. So he slipped into all the bad habits, the eating, the drinking, the watching, days and days and days worth of, well, he told me he watched every episode of Game of Thrones in like 5 days. I was like, oh, that's cool. I've never watched Game of Thrones, but I looked up, it's like 73 episodes. That's a lot of TV in 5 days. Right. So it took him that low. It took so much of his energy. It took so much of his energy. But he talks with people. He's starting to pull himself out of that energy. And so he's finding things like podcasts. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Jocko Willink, but he's, kind of in the mainstream now, old Navy SEAL guy, but very masculine, but the guy with high integrity. He's a man with high integrity. So somehow my brother found his podcast, and now he's doing jujitsu. He's doing all this stuff. But what he's doing, he's in the process of raising his energy. He's elevating his energy. And when you elevate your energy enough, you get to a point where you recognize that the bad stuff that happens to you, whether it's being in a narcissistic relationship, whether it's being in a world of intense pressure, you finally, when you elevate your awareness enough, and when you get to a place of high enough energy, you realize that all of these things are good for you. They're good for your soul. They're good for your spirit. They're good for your own evolution. So that's really the road that I take. And I don't really like to have conversations about victimhood and relationship abuse and that kind of stuff, because I know that people have the power to change their own lives in most cases.
I always say when somebody is dealing with stuff like that, once you know, you go.
Once you know, you go. There you go.
Yeah. That is the only thing that can help you. Once you know, you go.
That's brilliant, because that applies to anything. Like how many, just like, even like if I walk into the woods here this time of year, it's really foggy in the morning, right? You don't know. There's a path in the woods. You don't know, like, which way do I go? Once you know which way to go, you just go. Like it's just makes it so easy, right?
What you just described with your brother, I think for a while, especially if you are in the early stages of the shock or the grieving, and a divorce is like a little death. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's okay,
Totally.
have a time where, he is just watching Game of Thrones. It's okay
Absolutely.
for a week or so. Yeah. But please make sure you do not get stuck in it.
Yeah. And it's like what you asked, when somebody finds themselves 6 months after a major breakthrough falling back in, it's been almost 20 years since I began a particularly like very intense like form of qigong practice, and I remember within the first probably 4 or 5 months of it, it took me about 3 years to like master the first level 1 of this particular practice. But in the first like 4 or 6 months of it, I remember going to my teacher and being like, whoa, Tim, like I'm falling backwards. I feel a very sincere draw to do some of the self-destructive, like a very real tangible pull to do many of the self-destructive things I'm working on removing from my life. So a lot of that at that time, Judith, had to do with drugs, drug use. alcohol, drug use. And he told me something that really helped, and it's really stuck with me. He said, that's okay, man. Let yourself slip back, enjoy it, and go back. Don't hang out there too long, right? But don't try to force yourself not to experience that. Go back, relive it, and realize how much power you have now to change it, to step out of it. And so that's really it's really a very valuable ideal for people, is this differentiation between force and power. So many people want to get results out of life. They want to get results out of it. Want to get results. And some from that state of agitation, from that state of irritation, the anxiety, the overwhelm, the fear, all that kind of stuff, they're trying to have their way with the world, trying to have their way with their spouse, trying to make it, well, if you'll just change this way, right? Well, if I could just go master this business, everybody's moving. A lot of people are moving from an agitated place, from a place of force. And so just thinking philosophically or, energetically on the idea, like force requires counterforce. The harder that you push, the harder that whatever it is you're pushing for pushes back. It's just the nature of it. A little tweak in your understanding, a little tweak in your mindset, realizes that, okay, cool. If I'm able to just move powerfully, like Bruce Lee said, like water, I just move with power. I don't have to force anything. I just get what I want just by moving. A lot of men don't experience that in their lives these days, but to experience that power, you really have to be relaxed. Your nervous system has to be relaxed. You can't be in fight or flight or in that panic mode all the time. You can't be agitated, pissed off at somebody. You can't be holding a grudge. You can't be resentful. You can't be in chronic grief. You can't be apathetic, right? You have to be in a relaxed state. You have to be, you have to access your power. You need to be in a relaxed body. Breathe. It's like, there's so much of it right there, right?
Yeah, I think these are very challenging times in terms of, staying sane, a little bit sound, and not losing it completely. Because especially in a culture where losing it is celebrated. Yeah. So now everybody can become anything, whatever they want. Yeah. Do you feel tomorrow you are a woman? Yeah. Okay. So now you enter the women's locker room or whatever. And yeah, sometimes I look at it and I think, oh, we have a law here now as well. If you misgender somebody, that
Oh yeah,
can
yeah,
cost you a fine,
yeah, yeah.
or you go straight to jail.
Yep, conformity laws. Conform or pay the price. But
Yeah.
yeah, that stuff is going to happen. That stuff is cyclical. I mean, look just how the world's operated. I mean, tyranny, a little bit of freedom, tyranny, a little bit of freedom, tyranny, a little bit of freedom. And there's the fourth turning. The strong men create weak men. Create. This people have so many ways of describing the cycles that we're in. We're just here.
Mm.
The generation 30, 40 years ago, man, like if you were white in America at that time, like you had a great roll of the dice and your karmic roll of the dice. Good time to just sprout on planet Earth in the right location. So you had abundance and easiness and progress and, and the world turns. It does what it does. And that's the challenge of people, is to just be like content within themselves, the rock within themselves. Like the influence, the power that you can have over people when you're at peace and when you're relaxed is, it's amazing. I mean, I've seen it over and over again. And the more relaxed I become in life, like the more people are drawn to me, right? And
Yeah.
the more I have to offer people just through osmosis, just through presence, right? And even with my children as well. I mean, I've got a 12, 15, and 18-year-old, and had a great conversation with my 18-year-old daughter not too long ago. And she was just like, wow, Dad, I really have noticed the changes in you over the last couple of years, and it means so much to me. What do you see? Well, I notice you're not drinking. That's well, okay. Why does that matter to you if I drink or not? Because you're different when you don't drink.
Mm.
You're much less volatile. You're much more in control of yourself. But just like the way that you're being, Dad, like your presence is more stable, more steady. So yeah, I mean that's really, I think, the impact that we can have on the world is being in our own power. And there's a lot of coaches, there's a lot of people out there who can help you with this. There's a lot of programs, but if you have the inspiration, the inkling, if you have the curiosity to see what's over beyond courage into a more expansive way of being, and like to experience your own power, man, there's so many ways that you can get to it these days. So it's like, for that regard, like however evil and shitty things are out there, in that regard, like you have a chance right now to really like find your best self in the shit show, in the storm.
Yeah, and we are at the end of a large cycle anyhow, because what the Hindus call the Kali Yuga, yeah, or the
Yes.
Golden Age, Silver Age, blah blah blah. We would probably say, yeah, the age of Aquarius is at the
Mhm.
doorstep.
We'll see.
And when you look at it historically, whenever a cycle came to an end, everything was upside down.
Mhm.
Everything was total confusion. And yeah, why should it be different this time?
Why should it be different? I mean, look at just an individual life, right? At the very end, when the body dies, everything decays and completely breaks down, giving food to new life, right? It's just how it is. We all think we're so big and so important and stuff, but I love talking about things like plant medicines and the shamanic experiences that I've had and stuff. But so much of that like helps you to just keep things in perspective, to realize how small and finite this experience that we're having is.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
depends on who has that experience. If you're dealing with somebody who has extremely low self-esteem and so on and so forth, I don't think that would be a very helpful experience for them.
you
You
talking about
know,
the shamanic plant
telling
medicine
them you're
experience?
even smaller than you thought.
Uh, it's oh, okay, I see what you're saying. It's fine. Yeah, but there's a liberation in that, because like again, like your significance of your own self-worth changes. So then you're like, oh, it's okay to be small, right? If that makes sense, right? Like, oh, okay, being small is not such a bad thing. But when you feel so sour about I'm small, my life has no meaning, I'm worthless. And then you realize that, yeah, you're literally just electromagnetically vibrating batch of stardust, right? I mean, when you really put it all together. So it's helpful to be cosmic at times. It's helpful to be woo-woo at times. It's helpful to be serious at times. It's helpful to play through all the parts and experience all the emotions. But it's easy in this day and age to forget what it feels like to be relaxed and powerful and have a sense of command and agency over your own life. And that's what I really think is most valuable to people in this time. If you're inspired to study the New World Order, all the details of the vaccine and all the shedding and all that kind of stuff, do what you got to do, right? But like your sense of relaxation within yourself, your ability to exit the fight or flight pattern, right, and then move from that space will it will help you to experience the life that you're here, and the life that you deserve to experience while you're here, for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we have still very interesting times ahead of us, I'm pretty sure.
Blessing and a curse. So
Yeah, sometimes I read the headlines, and I think, what a time to be alive. Oh my
what
goodness.
time? You can look at it either way, right? It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It's like Captain Kirk from some old Star Trek movie. He's got
Yeah.
his bones or whatever. I don't know, man. I can go back. See, I have this whole library of experience. It's amazing to me, like the things that get embedded into your mind, like just seeing old commercials and stuff and knowing old jingles and stuff. And so, not to go off on a tangent there, but the mind is a powerful, powerful thing, like the mind is a powerful thing. And so often it's run by the body. And so when you really start to understand the mind body connection and how to insert your intention in between the two to get the body to stop pushing the mind in the wrong direction and vice versa, then you have the opportunity to really feel powerful in your life. So
Yeah. Final last words that you would like to add?
I don't know. It's a beautiful day here. Life is definitely a roller coaster. Um, and just like anything, just like any skill that you could seek to master, like the most valuable skill that you can master in this time is the skill of emotional sobriety, right? The ability to recognize what mood you're in, weigh that against how you would like to feel, what's best for you, what's best for your relationships, your partners, your business, whatever. Okay, well, is me being in a shitty mood, angry, frustrated all day, is that really going to get me the results that I want, or that the results that other people who are depending on me need to see of me? The ability to become aware of that and to change that when you desire to do so is the most profitable thing that you could learn. It's more valuable than anything. And I'm speaking from experience. I'm speaking from the experience of a person who has been wildly out of control emotionally for most of my life. And I've done all the road. I've done down all the addictions. Although, like I said, I've never smoked crack. Joke about that, but I've been through all of it: the drug addiction, the addiction to psychiatry, the alcohol, all that kind of stuff. I've done all the shamanic plant medicines and stuff. And what you're really faced with, no matter what you do, you're still faced with the direction that your emotional body wants to take you in any moment. And so to master that, to begin to understand and put all of your energy and attention onto the recognition that there's a system within inside of you that is triggered by the outside world, emotionality, this, like you just said, like you could be fined for saying something to a person, misgendering them, whatever. When I was young, it was sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. You heard that all day, every day from all your teachers, all your parents, your grandparents. That's all they ever said. Whatever, dude, it doesn't matter what somebody says to you. Don't be emotional about it. And so there's a tremendous amount of pressure for us to just view life emotionally. Okay, so now that we're viewing life emotionally, do you want to have control over your emotions, or do you want to have no control? And so, like, to master that, to really bring all of your attention to that, to understand why you do what you do, and how your emotional state drives what you do, I think is the most powerful, the most valuable thing that you could learn right now. Thanks for having me. It's always such a joy, Judith, talking to you. It's a beautiful day here. I'm gonna go do some, I don't know, might go do something outside fun, but it's lovely here in the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina. So
Yeah,
thanks for
great.
having me.
So then I will not hold you any longer from your outdoor experience.
Awesome.
So that was it, guys. Night flight for today, and see you all next time. Stay safe and sound.
Awesome. Thanks.